Hi everyone, it's day 29 of the Vende Globe. Now over the weekend, Sam Davies and Sebastian Simon both retired into Cape Town after collisions with UFOs. Well, we use that expression a lot. What is a UFO? Well, here today to help me unpick that and talk a little bit about, why so many of these boats are having collisions at sea is an incredible sailor, Damian Foxall. But before we introduce Damian, let's just have a look at this video from the 2016 race, where Quito de Pavant hit a whale in the Southern Ocean. Joining me today is Damian Foxall, multiple round-the-world sailor with over 10 laps of the planet, including 6 Volvo Ocean Races. Damian is the Sustainability Manager for 11th Hour Racing, one of the IMOCA teams that is preparing to compete in the Ocean Race in 2022. Hi, Damian.
Hey, Conrad. It's really great to be on your show. You're doing great work.
Oh, thank you very much. So I imagine, you've been following the Vende with some interest. I know that you've, not only sailed the IMOCAs, but you've been involved in this fleet and circuit for a long time. What do you think of the race so far?
I mean, it's just another level again, isn't it? I mean, the class is really spiraled in terms of performance, and the engagement from skippers, sponsors, designers, and builders have produced a boat which can literally push beyond the bounds of kind of what the skipper can physically bear, and of course the skipper can push the boat beyond the bounds of what the boat can bear sometimes as well. And that's the case in any type of yachting, but I think especially when we start to see the potential performance that these boats have with foils and airplane type cockpits, and we're still seeing a full-on regatta out there with some amazing feats of seamanship, even when things are going well.
Yep.
With a couple of the boats pretty far south, taking the short route and doing well, and then people like Jean, who's cutting the fromage in two, as they say, and taking the shorter route and still up there with an older boat. It's the Vendée Globe. There is very few events in any sport that compares to the endurance and what it just takes to get on the start line, and then of course complete. And you can probably tell me more about that than.
I know that you've been working with 11th Hour Racing on a whole series of developments, technology developments that have been implemented in these races. Can you give us a quick sense of some of the things that you've been working on?
I spent 6 years working for the Canadian Wildlife Federation here in Canada, and as part of that, we were involved with the Quebec St. Malo. We're involved in providing guidance for the event, and of course, myself have spent a lot of time in the water, just like yourself, and so we see we see the beauty of the ocean. We also see the hazards that are out there, including the ocean citizens, and we're really only visitors. So I think the best practice starts before you even leave the dock, understanding the race course, understanding what type of habitat the race course is going through. And if we're looking at something like the Quebec St. Malo, which is going through highly dense and very important populations of marine mammals, then the race course has to be adjusted accordingly. And,
Yep.
and the IMOCA class has done an amazing, and the event has really taken this to heart and has done an amazing job, especially on this event, reaching out to the local to the scientific community, looking for the best data available. And likewise, the skippers themselves, there's quite a bit of technology that is now installed on board to help to address and mitigate the situation, the risk. I guess you kind of group the technologies into 4 or 5 different categories, and one of the two or three of the larger categories are about improving your watch keeping capabilities, and so the Oscar falls into one of these. It's a forward facing system which works day and night and allows you to see everything that's above the surface within a certain range.
Yep.
So there is a limit, can only probably go out to 200-300 meters maximum, but it's technology which allows you to sort of see anything that breaks the surface, whether it's a boat or something, in theory, a marine mammal. If it's breaking the surface, the Oscar should pick it up.
Yep.
It also uses artificial intelligence. So the more often the machine sees something and analyzes it properly, the more intelligent and more accurate it becomes. And so as a fleet, the IMOCA class and other fleets are feeding into this system, which is getting better and better at predicting what's in front of the boat. But we have to remember that, if you think about 2 or 3 or maximum 4, even 500 meters, if you're doing 30 knots, that's less than a few seconds to react.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the IMOCA class, I believe they've got these systems hooked up to the autopilot, and that's probably in some ways the best way of, a bit like an automatic drive car. The reaction is possibly better by the machine than it is by the human. But at the end of the day, we're still restricted by speed and by what the machine can see. And honestly, the Oscar looks like a really interesting system. And a lot of the boats, in fact, we have also installed it. And a lot of the boats in the IMOCA class and on the Vende Globe have installed it. Yep. But just to kind of underline, I guess, the limitations of the system, of the 6 strikes we've seen so far in the Vende Globe, I believe that 4 of the boats had the Oscar system on board.
Yep.
So again, just underlining the limitations.
That's right. System. And you mentioned, things that are above the surface. So typically, if a whale is, 3 or 4 meters under the surface, it's not going to be seen. And still do substantial damage.
Totally. I mean, when we think of whether it's a container or marine debris of any type, typically like an iceberg, it's generally speaking mostly below the surface.
Yeah.
And even someone standing at the helm in the middle of the daytime has a hard time avoiding. If a boat's going fast, it's a hard time avoiding something that just appears on the bow. So we're looking for IT solutions to this, which, at the end of the day, there's going to be a limit.
Yeah.
There are other solutions, again, thinking about watch keeping systems. There's a solution that actually uses sonar frequencies to look forward, just like a depth sounder, but instead of looking down to understand what the depth of the water is, what's in front of the water column in front of the boat. And that technology does exist and has been marketed and scaled up to for private yachts and bigger ships. It just hasn't been scaled down to the performance market yet. It requires some budget to achieve that, but the technology does exist, and I believe that hopefully within 5 years, we should see that technology on race boats. And really, I think that is potentially, again, quite an interesting solution, because we're not limited now to what's above the surface. Literally, it can map the column of water in front of the boat, but it's always going to be limited by distance and the speed of the boat and reaction time.
So technology is one part of this. Yeah, the other part is understanding, the mammal's behavior and where they are in the ocean. Tomorrow I'm having a conversation with a marine biologist who's doing some work on migratory routes. There are breeding grounds, there are feeding grounds, typically, warm water for breeding, cold water for feeding, or going into the Southern Ocean at a time in the summer when there's plenty of krill and so on. These sort of, I mean, is it fair to say that there are sort of almost like these super highways, these sort of routes that the animals will cross at certain times of year? Can we plot their movements and start our races and finish our races at a time when they're not around? Is that possible?
I think to a certain extent that approach is correct, and we should do our best. And so, for instance, one of the best examples is on the eastern coast of the US, where there's a very sort of diminishing population of North Atlantic right whales, and there's I believe less than 300 or 400 left, and they really are becoming, they're on the verge of extinction, literally, being issues with ship strikes, net entanglements, lobster tracks, etc., and a lot of different technologies and solutions being looked at. And one of them is tagging the whales, using satellite or other underwater drone systems or plane spotting to map where they are and then try to provide that on a live platform to shipping. And that does exist. But that kind of works when you think about a very specific population of 300, 400 whales in a very specific area. And even then, we're talking about the vast ocean up and down the eastern seaboard of the US down to the Caribbean. And so there's very clearly limitations. The best way I can kind of draw a parallel is if you imagine you're driving down the road. I'm here in North America at the moment, and I kind of see a deer sign on the side of the road. Okay, so you kind of wake up a little bit, but do you stop driving? Do you slow down, possibly a couple of miles per hour, but you're still going to keep going. And that's very much the same for anyone who hasn't been on the water. This is very much the same with shipping. We're kind of aware of the danger, but the ocean is so vast that even if we knew exactly where the whale was at any one given moment, it would have moved on, sort of half an hour later. And so the notion of live tracking has got purpose, has got use, but I think it's more, as you're suggesting, about seasonal understanding of where they are, where they're going, and trying to avoid those hotspots and put in waypoints and to make sure that we're just like shipping lanes do. Shipping lanes are now being assigned to avoid seasonal migrations of marine mammals, and as a leisure industry, performance industry in the sort of racing, we need to make sure we're taking the same approach. And the IMOCA class had put a lot of effort into that this edition, and we need to keep pushing in that direction.
I did wonder whether race organisers, now as part of their sort of briefing when they're looking at the whole, whether it's ice gates or weather limits or that these conversations are having.
Well, listen, I mean, it's in everyone's interest to really, move from a position of being ocean users to ocean stewards. When we think of the ocean race and our own team, and most other teams out there now are kind of looking at sustainability in all its various aspects and considering how we can shift from being, just doing less bad to actually leaving, addressing issues and making things better for our presence, and using the platform that we have as teams, as a global sport with a huge following and platform, and helping the general public to understand. So when we use terms like OFNI, I mean, I used to love the term because it kind of links you to UFOs, and it kind of gives you this nice idea of you're out in the ocean and it's sort of this spatial space with and you know what I'm getting at, and there's stuff out there, but you don't know, you'd always sleep with your feet forward because you don't know what you're going to come up against. And generally speaking, you're enjoying the beauty and the biodiversity of the ocean and what's around you. There's many days of not seeing anything, and then suddenly you see something amazing, and every so often you do hit something. However, there is a culture in our sport, which is to really be the ostrich and just stick your head in the sand and be very embarrassed. It is not comfortable. It's a sickening feeling when you hit something, and it's not a very nice feeling when you recognize what it is. You're thinking about the boat, you're thinking about your crew safety, and if you're hitting a marine mammal, honestly, it's not a really good story. However, by using the term OFNI, we're suggesting that, first of all, we really don't know what we just hit, and we can always assume that if it was a hard strike, we hit some sort of marine debris, container, wood, and if it was a soft strike that seriously slowed the boat down, it's very likely, and without causing significant damage, then it's very likely it was either a marine mammal, shark, basking shark, or sunfish. And it happens fairly often. And for us as ocean stewards, to suggest that these are OFNIs is at very least disingenuous and portrays the wrong image to the general public. And the proof is, I mean, you look at the threads, you look at a Facebook thread, anyone now over the last few days, and there's a lot of comments in there going, oh, it's really a shame, all this marine debris out there, we've got to do something about it. That's right, we totally do. A ship just dropped, I think, 1,900 containers in the Pacific. That is a big issue. Just so you know, as you know, Conrad, most of those will sink. Those containers are designed to sink. There's a pastille that will melt away, and the container will sink. Rarely they do remain floating, either because of the content or the system doesn't work. But it's not a good story, of course, the containers. No. But for us to use that excuse as kind of unidentified floating objects and to include marine mammals and ocean biodiversity in that space is, I believe, very disingenuous, and we should shift the terminology.
It's a really important point, and I'm sure that's something that we absolutely need to action. Let's just move on to the race itself. So I've just bring up the tracker, and it's pretty interesting for the lead group. 2 boats in the front are trying to stay ahead of and hook into this high pressure system, stay in the sort of flatter water around the high. Don't want to be swallowed up by the front here. Not going to be easy, but yesterday, in fact over the weekend, we had this conversation about whether they push real hard at this moment to stay ahead of the front, or whether they preserve their boats, let the front roll over and fall into the back of it. And it looks like that Apivia has put the hammer down. They're trying to stay out in front at this moment. But is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I that's always the balance, isn't it, Conrad? When you're chasing, you've got the high pressure in front of you and the water's still flat. And you've got building wind behind you, the sea is building behind you, and it's honestly, of course, the sea state that's going to slow down, especially these boats. We really need to kind of think of these boats more as sort of multi-hull type performance in terms of their overall capabilities, but how they're going to be affected by sea state. And so when you have that flat water and you can see the front coming behind you, hammer down and send it while you can, because once the front passes, it's going to be a slow few hours sorting yourself out, getting on the other jibe, and until things settle in again.
And then just behind that lead group, we've got the sort of middle group who are sort of directly south of South Africa at the moment, skirting around a high pressure, but it does look like there's a low system to the north of them that is developing up here, and the routing at the moment has Armel sort of getting through, but it crosses down over their path. If we just look at the forecast over the next few days, and just let me know your thoughts on how this might affect that group. So that's Wednesday, and then this is Thursday. So by Thursday, it looks like it's formed as a low and it's moved to the south of the course, but sort of Tuesday, Wednesday night, they may even have some headwinds here.
That's never comfortable, is it? And I think, I'm assuming there's an ice gate in that area. And so, of course, this is the difference between the Jules Verne and the Vendée Globe, where, the Jules Verne is not limited by ice gates, whereas the Vendée Globe is. And this is, honestly, I think the main argument against ice gates is that when you get this type of weather situation, it kind of locks you in.
Yeah.
Of course, the ice gates have a very, very important use, and they should be there. But this is the negative side, and it's ultimately looks like it's going to create quite a big split in the fleet, Conrad.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's really interesting talking about that ice gate limit, because certainly there's been times when you felt almost like you're on a lee shore. You're pinned against the coast, and you're having to work your way down this coast to stay in the best breeze, which is making everyone a lot more stressful. Whereas look at the Jules Verne at the moment, Sedibo have scooted around the bottom of this. They're going to end up a long way south. Having said that,
yes, that does look like it's they're heading off on an Antarctic adventure.
Yes, so we might get some images of icebergs and so on. I mean, presumably these boats will be carrying Oscar systems as well.
I believe so, and so we just talk about 2 different types of watch-keeping type technology. One specifically for the boat crew, which is the Oscar system. We also talked about the forward-facing sonar system, and then about actually tracking and using satellite imagery or data to estimate where the populations might be. The other system, of course, is deterrence, and I think that's where you might have mentioned the pinger system. Now, pingers were developed to reduce bycatch in nets, specifically for porpoise and dolphin, and the absence of bycatch after the implementation of pingers, or the reduction of bycatch, shows that there was and has, they do have a certain use, pingers, but they're very specific to the frequency of the species you're trying to communicate or engage with. In other words, change their behavior. And so when we're thinking about how we might use pingers for vessels, then the challenge is to understand what species we're trying to communicate with. Is it just whales? And we're trying to reach, we're trying to send out a sound to dolphin and porpoise. And so a couple of the boats have started to install a pinger system, which is at a frequency that can be heard by the large whales.
Yep.
The challenge here is to understand whether really the behavioral change is what we're looking for, because many marine species, when they're disturbed, come to the surface.
Yep.
So whereby a pinger on a static net might elicit the right reaction. In other words, go left, come to the surface, down, just don't come here. When you're on a moving vessel and you turn on the pinger, we're just assuming that the marine species, first of all, can hear, and second of all, is going to do what we want them to do, which is to move away from the surface and away from the track of the boat. The best way I can describe the pinger really is it's a bit like getting in your car at night, driving down the sidewalk, turning the lights off and starting to just leaning on the horn and hoping that everyone is going to jump out of your way.
Yeah.
Assuming that everyone can hear.
Yeah.
There's no people out there with auditory deficiencies, and everyone understands that you're on the sidewalk, not on the road. So, the pinger system, I think it probably has some use. But obviously, honestly, we need to prove its efficiency by the absence of data. In other words, boats that have pingers and have not hit whales, or boats that have not had pingers and hit whales, we need to build up enough scientific observations that it moves from being anecdotal to a kind of inertia of a body of observations that shows that it's working. Right now, we've got, I believe there's 2 pingers on board. Of the 6 boats that have had strikes, we've got 2 pingers on board. So again, that's just anecdotal evidence. We need to work as a community to really understand whether they work or not.
Yeah, that's really, really good, really, really interesting. I mean, I'm sure this is going to be the start of many more conversations, and so it's been really, really useful to catch up with you and to go through it in so much depth. I'm assuming the reports and the work that you've been doing with the 11th Hour is something that will be sort of shared, and you'll be able to update other teams with this information. Tomorrow, I'll get the chance to catch up with an animal sort of psychologist, marine biologist. Perhaps we'll ask him what the whales really really think at the point when they hear the alarm or the ping. Damian, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today, and I look forward to catching up again maybe further down the track. Let's hope we don't have any more collisions.
Yeah, thanks, Conrad. Listen, this is not a very nice topic for anyone, and it always feels a little awkward when you're commenting on someone else's race, on the aspirations of sponsors and skippers, and what an amazing event. I think we're all just trying to move to a better space and to use our platform to bring this issue, because it's not just about racing boats. It's about the leisure industry at large, and solutions for shipping and ferries as well. And so hopefully we can be part of the solution going forward.
So that was Damian Foxall, who has been there, done it, not only in terms of his sailing career, done so much ocean experience, but using that experience now to really help teams to prepare, and race organisers to prepare their routes, so that we don't become part of the problem. We definitely find ways to become part of the solution. Thanks very much. See you again tomorrow. Cheers. Bye.